Hello, friends. This is Damodaran welcoming you to a podcast on time management. Now, all of us have heard about time management. All of us believe that we know enough about time management. So, what am I going to share with you? Let me start with what the poet Rudyard Kipling said in a very interesting poem titled If. And the relevant line reads like this: Fill with 60 seconds worth of distance run, which means every second counts. You are not expected, in your own interest, to waste any of the time that's available to you. Now, time has two attributes. We all know about it, but it's worth reiterating. One, it's a great leveler. Rich or poor, old or young, you have the same time every day, the same 24 hours, and packed into those 24 hours, whatever activities you choose to go through during that day. But the rich man doesn't have more, the poor man doesn't have less. And that's one characteristic of time. The other, which is more worrisome and we can do nothing about it, is that it's perishable. If you don't use the time today, it's not like you can carry it forward and use it tomorrow morning. No, that time is not available to you. So if these are the two attributes, it's worth reflecting on a sentence that you and I have heard over time. Many of us have disbelieved it, which is that the busier a person is, the more time she or he has to do whatever needs to be done. Whether it is meeting people, participating in discussions, traveling, doing whatever. The busy person seems to have more time than the less busy person. How does that happen? There are textbooks written on time management. If you have read them, if you have been to programs on time management, I urge you to erase that tape, because some of them will start by saying, you log all the telephone calls that you get during the day and then see how much time has been wasted on calls. But you won't last till evening. It's such a boring activity. Don't even attempt it. Do something else instead. Go to a middle class Indian home which has a working woman who is a mother of two school going young children, who has a husband that needs to be provided for before he goes to office. Because in India, the men are lord and masters of the house. They won't lift their little finger very often to do anything that needs to be done to share the load. So think of this lady. What does she do? Starting in the morning, she has to get herself ready, of course, for office. She has to prepare the two children, walk them to the bus stand or wherever, prepare breakfast and lunch for herself and for the man in the house, and all of that has to be packed into very little time that's available at that part of the day. So how does she do it? I urge you to watch that. I've done this and discovered that there is something that was taught in colleges some years ago, which is called the critical path method. So CPM and PERT were taught in engineering colleges, but the average Indian middle class working woman did not need to go to college to learn that. She practiced a simple principle, and that's the first principle of time management. What can be done parallelly, don't do sequentially. I'm not for a moment saying that you try and become a master at multitasking. More often than not, you will fail. But there are some activities which by their very nature allow you to do something else while this activity is going on. So there's some food being cooked. You don't have to look at that very fondly, but while that food is getting cooked, you can do something else. Let's give a little credit to the average man also. If you go to the olden times when there were no overhead showers and stuff like that, you had to fill water in buckets in order to have a bath. So what did the man do? The average man, the not unintelligent man. He turned on the tap so that the bucket would get filled, and he perhaps completed the activity of shaving during that period. Two activities needed to be done parallelly, not sequentially. So that's my first observation based on all of what I had seen. Success lies in doing parallelly what you can do parallelly and need not do sequentially. The second is, don't trust everything to memory. If you have a lot of things that need to be done, put it down on paper. Of course, it's a little outdated to talk about paper. You can put it down on your phone or any other system that you have, but put it down. Don't trust memory. One of the lessons that I have learned, and it's often a costly lesson, is that the shortest pencil is better than the longest memory. Don't trust your memory, it could play tricks, even if you think that that is your biggest strength. So write down what you need to do during the day. It's a very useful activity. It also encourages you to function in a disciplined manner when it comes to looking at what you need to do with time during the day. You don't have to attempt them chronologically. What is important should get addressed first. Of course, what is urgent should get addressed. What is routine will clearly come in the second half of the day or the third quadrant that you have during the day. Now, what is important obviously cannot be overlooked. And therefore, as I mentioned, it comes at the beginning. But it's also important to remember that each of us is different when it comes to what are our most productive hours. Some of us are most productive first hour in the morning. Therefore, you do the important tasks because your mind is fresh, you are razor sharp, and you can address issues quickly. But there are also some people who during lunchtime do a better job because there's no one to disturb them. The rest of the world is having lunch, and therefore undisturbed they could work for half an hour, 45 minutes, focus on what needs undivided attention. That's a personality trait. That is something that you will discover over time. What is your sweet spot when it comes to time? Which is that sliver of time that you can look at for doing the tougher jobs. Lists are important, as I mentioned. There's another lesson that I learned, which is it's not enough if you are in an organization or a group situation to plan your own time. And let me share a story with you. Many years ago, I decided one fine morning how I would divide an average working day. So the first half an hour went into matters that I needed to share with my personal staff in terms of the work for the day. Then I was open to discussions with my direct reports. I set apart some time for visitors. I set apart some time to go and talk to my boss. There were the routine things that actually occupy, that pack an average working man's day. But what I didn't bargain for was that the time that I had budgeted or set apart for meeting visitors was a time when my boss used to routinely call me for discussions, and so my planning went haywire. So I went up to him and told him, this is a problem. Can I first work on your time management for the day, and from that I will work out mine so that there is no conflict in the way we allocate our roles. And let me tell you this, he was a very receptive person. He could have thrown me out, but he said that, okay, I'll give you a chance, let's see what you come up with. And thereafter, I'm not saying it worked without mistakes, without difficulties, but more often than not, we ended up using our time better than we had done in the past. There is another issue about time that we need to understand, which is if someone's work depends on the work that you do, and you have some other work which is not connected with anyone else's work, what would you prioritize? If you took up the work that was your work, had nothing to do with anyone else. It was entirely your own work. You ended up keeping the other person waiting till the time that you were free to do what needed to be done so that he or she could do what was consequential. Therefore, when it comes to that kind of a choice, tackle the matters where once you have completed them, somebody else can take the ball and run. Otherwise, they will spend a lot of time waiting and you will not be in the best books as you continue to work on what you think is important but relates only to you and to nobody else. One other matter is that don't mix up personal and official work. Doing a bit of this, a bit of that, reaching out to somebody on the telephone while you are halfway through preparing a board note or something is unproductive. It will show up as the work of a person that was not focused. That is something that is very critical and you need to attend to that. There are several other matters that I can share with you. One, of course, we can't forget the telephone in this day and age when the cell phone has become an extension of our arm. And if you let it go, you feel an incomplete human being. But does that mean that every minute of the day you need to be on that phone? Secondly, do you need to take phone calls every time somebody calls you? It's entirely possible that you can set apart a time when you will originate calls that are important and when you will be free to take calls. Some people go to the extent of writing on the letterheads, it's printed somewhere in the letterhead, if you wish to call me, please call me between this time and this time. So they free themselves up for the rest of the time. And one last thought is, if you want to discuss a matter, walk over to the room of the person with whom you wish to discuss. Because then, once the work is over, you are free to leave. If someone else comes to your room to discuss something, it's entirely possible that person, after discussions, stays on to discuss the weather, the latest cricket match, whatever is in the newspaper headlines, and all of this happens while you're waiting to get started on your next item of work. Use your feet. Using your feet is very useful. It has several uses, one of which is go to somebody else's room and then discuss with that person. Finally, at the end of the day, take a look at that list which you made either the previous night or the next morning. Some items that you could not complete, and it's not something that you need to feel guilty about, because some of these lists tend to be unduly long and we don't prioritize enough. So there are some things that get left at the end of the day, and you have to see whether these are the things that will get addressed first thing next day, because there are some that come with timelines attached to it, and those timelines are sometimes inviolable. So my message is this, and this is on the basis of experience, this is on the basis of knowledge that I have gained by looking at people who have mastered time. If you're organized, if you schedule, if you sequence, if you prioritize, and you ensure that the other person's time is as valuable as your own, you will benefit, the organization will benefit. One of the best boards that I have seen in an office, which was placed opposite the visitor's chair, said, "Your time is as precious as mine." That's a useful indication to someone not to overstay his or her welcome. As we decided at the beginning, time is perishable. So let it not be like vegetables that perish before we take another look at them and throw them out. Here you don't need to throw out anything, it goes out on its own. Every day must count in your life, because only then you will realize that you have extracted value for yourself and for those who depend on you. Wish you all the best.